Good morning and welcome to this AHDB webinar. A very warm welcome. It's a very cold day outside, but you're warmly welcome to this AHDB webinar, which is focusing on research on blackcurrant crops this morning. My name is Scott Raffle. I work for the AHDB and I will be chairing this morning's meeting. A few housekeeping rules, if we may, before we get going. You are all muted. You can hear me. I can't hear you. Questions, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions this morning. And if you want to do so, I will explain how to do that in a minute. This morning's presentation will be timed. So we're aiming to finish on the hour at 11 o'clock, but it may just run over slightly depending on if you've got lots of questions or not. We do get asked by delegates to run over a little bit if there are important questions that you wish us to continue with. So, but we aim to finish round about 11. This morning's presentation will be recorded and you will have the opportunity to view it again, or others that weren't able to join us today can do so, and that will be available on the AHDB website next week. Basis and Noroso points have been applied for today. So on your screen, you will see what we have a mock-up here of on the right-hand side of my screen. That's your control panel. If you want to submit any questions, you can do so. There is a little question tab here in grey, which you can click on, and it allows you to submit your question during the course of the event this morning. As I say, next week, the recording should be made available to you all. Before you joined this morning, you would have been prompted to enter your BASIS details. We can submit those to BASIS on your behalf. If you haven't actually submitted them to us and you still want to register for the event, you can send your BASIS details to Aaron Newman, who's running today's webinar. The email address is at the foot of the screen, aaron.newman@ahdb.org.uk, or alternatively, you can send it to my email address and I'll forward to Aaron. So what are we here for this morning? Well, first of all, I would say that AHDB collaborates closely with the Blackcurrant Growers Association, and we discuss the high priorities for research on blackcurrant crops in the UK with them, and we try and target what we do to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the blackcurrant growers. Two things we're here to discuss this morning. One is SCEPTRE Plus. SCEPTRE Plus is a project that AHDB has been funding for a number of years, and it effectively is a screening trial for new agrochemical products that we can look for alternatives. In the continuing demise and loss of products, we can find alternatives to try and find solutions to pest and disease problems. So this morning we'll be talking a little bit about a blackcurrant gall mite, blackcurrant leaf spot, and weed control in blackcurrants. These are SCEPTRE Plus trials that we've been funding to look for alternative chemical products for their control. But in addition to that, we've also added in a little slot for one of our speakers, Adrian Harris, to talk about winter chilling. And winter chilling is a major problem for the blackcurrant industry because we've been having repeated mild wet winters with insufficient winter chill for blackcurrants to break bud evenly and produce us with reliable yields from year to year. So AHDB was partially involved with an IUK project, and subsequent to that project, which sought alternative or chemical means for improving bud break, we have done some trials work to help growers with that as well. So the agenda for this morning, we're going to kick off with Adrian Harris, and Adrian will start off dealing with that project on winter chilling. He'll also talk about the SCEPTRE Plus work on blackcurrant gall mite control. Then we'll move on to Dave Kaye from ADAS, who's going to talk to us about blackcurrant leaf spot control under SCEPTRE Plus. And then finally, Chloe Whiteside will finish this morning's proceedings talking about our SCEPTRE Plus work on weed control in blackcurrants. Now, the other thing I should just say today is we have our expert, Rob Saunders, with us. Rob will not be presenting, but will be available for discussion to put some of the results into context for you out there. Rob is known to many of you because he spent about 9 years as an agronomist working for GlaxoSmithKline when they were producing blackcurrants for their Ribena products. So he's an expert in the industry, and Rob joins us today to help out and assist. So I'm going to first of all kick off by inviting Adrian Harris to join us. Adrian has worked for NIAB EMR since 1999. He's worked in the entomology group for most of those years. His particular expertise is in pesticide application and IPDM in fruit production. And since 2012, he's been specializing in commercial trials, helping to bring new products to the industry. So who better to work on winter chill and SCEPTRE Plus on gall mite. Adrian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott. So yeah, I'm Adrian Harris. I'm the Horticultural Trials Coordinator here at NIAB EMR. And I'm going to talk about, as Scott said, the issues of winter chill and blackcurrant gall mite. So what's the problem? As Scott has said, our winters are getting warmer. In the last 20 years, the amount of winter chill we've been getting has decreased by 300 hours, and it's continuing. It's still getting worse. I know that's hard to believe with the snow outside, but there we are. So blackcurrants aren't getting the winter chill they need. This is leading to asynchronous bud burst, which is leading to the asynchronous flowering and ripening, which leads to decreased yields. So as you can see with the two blackcurrant bushes I'm showing, the one on the top has got a nice uniform spread of fruit, all similar sizes, whereas the one at the bottom has got a range of sizes going from just set flowers at the bottom up to well-developed fruit at the top. Of course, this then progresses so that when you get closer to harvest, you have the issues you see here, where the plant on the left has nice, healthy, uniform, ripe fruit, and the plant on the right has got everything from small green fruit through to ripe fruit. So this leads to the decreased yields we were talking about. So as Scott said, this is a follow-on from an Innovate project. So that was a 3-year trial, and it was looking at testing existing dormancy breaking products, trying to optimize their use for blackcurrant, work out how they were actually working and what they were doing to the blackcurrant, to tie this into climate modeling to direct their use, and then to put all of this together to create an optimized product specifically for blackcurrant. Well, that's where we got to, and it was the last point we were still working on when the trial came to an end. So the aim of what I've been doing is to pull together all of that information to get a final optimized bud breaker for blackcurrant. To do this, we were looking at 3 trials. The first, looking at the nitrogen source that was in the bud breaker. The second, looking at the wetting agent. And then the third, to compare the bud breaker we've developed with the products that are commercially available, not only in the UK, but across Europe. The trials were all designed in a similar way. So they were complete randomized block designs with 8 treatments and 4 replicates. In each treatment plot, we had 5 shoots that we assessed, and on each of those shoots, we had 13 buds. So at each week, we were assessing the growth stage of 2,080 buds. Then all of our products were applied with our electric mist blower at 400 litres per hectare. So our first trial, nitrogen source, you can see our 8 treatments here. So the untreated control, then our industry standard of erga plus its wetting agent, active erga. We then have our initial mixture of basal A, which is calcium nitrate, citric acid, glucose with the wetter wetsit. Our new formulation of basal C, which uses ammonium nitrate plus citric acid, glucose and the wetter. Then all 4 of the individual components on their own, just to check that it's not just those on their own that are having the effects. We did this with John Hinchcliffe at Nackington Farm. It was sprayed on the 8th of April last year when the crop was at 3% green tip. So this is when it's just bursting and you can just start to see green at the end of the buds. It was on Ben Alder, and Ben Alder needs 2,157 hours of winter chill. It only got 1,576, so it had a decent chill deficit. So what did we find? And I can already hear what you're thinking. This is a lot of lines on one chart. It is, so we'll lose anything that isn't really important. So the 4 lines from the individual components, which just leaves us with our untreated control, the active erga, basal A and basal C. So the green line is the control, and anything to the left or above the control has got a higher percentage bud burst than the control had. So as you can see, Erga, the grey line, is by far the highest, closely followed by Basal A and then Basal C. When we look at this statistically, there's no significant differences between the treatments, which is basically telling us that there is no difference between which nitrogen source we use. So on to our second trial, where we were looking at the wetting agents. So again, we have our untreated control, our industry standard of Erga plus active Erga, and then our Basal A and Basal C treatments. This time, rather than just using Wetsit, we used a range of wetting agents, so Wetsit, Codicide, and Silwet L77. We did this trial at Hugh Boucher's at Newlands Farm, again sprayed on the 8th of April. This time the variety was Ben Tyran, which needed 2,328 hours of winter chill, so even more than the Ben Alder, but only received 1,652. So what did we get? As you can see this time, there's a very big difference between the untreated control and all of the treatments. The Basal A with Codicide and Basal C with Codicide are very similar to the Basal A and Basal C with Wetsit. So again, for ease, I'll drop those two out. It gives us a clearer picture of what's going on. So again, anything better than the untreated control is higher than it on the chart. So our Erga is almost identical in efficacy to Basal A and Basal C with Wetsit. So that's the grey line, the red line, and the yellow line. But when we've added Silwet, we've actually had a jump in efficacy of both Basal A and Basal C. And now to the third trial, where we were looking at the untreated, again, our Erga and active Erga mix, our Basal A and Basal C mixes, and then products from across Europe that are available for dormancy breaking. So Dormex, Breakout, and Blueprints. Breakout and Blueprints, both like Erga, have their own wetting agent associated with them. And then treatment 8, we had a spare slot in the trial because we couldn't get hold of a product. And it was suggested by one of the clients that we try Basal C with their wetter, Breakout LG441. So just to fill the gap, that was put in. We did this trial on site because these products are not licensed in the UK. We thought it's far safer to use them on site, and it gets away from any crop destruction that might have been involved with doing it on a grower's hold'em. We did these on the 9th of April on the variety Ben Tyran, and at East Malling we've got slightly more chill hours than at the other sites, but again, still not enough to put us over the threshold that was needed. So again, a lot of lines. Really on this one, the only one I can drop out is Dormex, the black dotted line, because there's no difference between that and the untreated control. So our untreated control is our lowest green line again. And then above that, we've got our Basal A and Basal C formulations with not much difference between the two of them. We then get to the Blueprint, which is the blue line, which is just as efficient as the active Erga at dormancy breaking. And then above that, the best by far was the Breakout, along with our mixture of Basal C with the Breakout wetting agent. So what does this mean? When we put everything together, we can say that there's no significant difference between using calcium nitrate or ammonium nitrate in the formulation of our bud breaker. And if we use Silwet L77, it increases both the efficacy of Basal A and Basal C as a dormancy breaker. Of the industry standard products we tried, Breakout is probably the most effective for dormancy breaking in blackcurrant. And the addition of the Breakout LG441 wetting agent with Basal C massively increased its efficiency as a dormancy breaker for blackcurrant. Just to try and simplify this for everybody, I've put a table together that's listing the dormancy breakers and a very rough ranking of where they've come in these trials. So the best is the Breakout, but the chances of that being available in the UK are probably remote. We then have our Basal C formulation with the Breakout wetting agent, Blueprints and active Erga. So when we get to the Erga, the Basal A and the Basal C with Silwet added, that we get into the realms of what is probably most useful for growers, which are the easiest products to work with and the easiest and the most readily available. And I have to admit, if I was using anything, I'd be using the Basil C with ammonium nitrate with the Silhouette. Everything's readily available. They're nice, easy products to get your hands on and easy to work with and give good results. So we've then also been working on blackcurrant gall mite as part of SCEPTRE Plus, and we've been looking at new products for the control of gall mite. We're now in the 3rd year of this work. So what have we done? Well, we've been looking at the results we got from years 1 and 2 and using the products that proved effective in those years to put spray programs together. So we did the trial last year. We assessed it in February. We sprayed it, monitored the blackcurrant gall mite on that variety and on 4 other varieties, because we're interested in, is there any varietal difference going on in the migration of galls and migration of mites? And then the final assessment is due any day now, but hopefully after the snow's gone. So again, we did a complete randomized block design, but this time with 12 treatments. We had 5 replicates, and we counted the number of gall buds on each bush in February last year, and we will count them again, as soon as we've lost the snow. Again, our products were all applied with our electric mist blower at 500 litres per hectare. So this is our table of products and treatments. Because it's a SCEPTRE Plus trial, we've got to keep some of the products coded. From the work we've done in the last 2 years, there was only 3 products that we were interested in. 9786 and 9989 we've had to keep coded, but thiopron, a new sulfur formulation from UPL, has actually got approval on blackcurrants, so we can actually show you that one. We then took these products and we put them together in programs of sprays. So either treatment A early and B late, or B early and C late, and any possible combination we could get of these products. So we monitored the gall mite migration through the season, and as you can see from the blue line, the mites started migrating sort of early mid-March, but didn't finish until the middle of June. We sprayed our 5% targeted spray on the 7th of April, then our spray targeted at the 50% point in the migration on the 1st of May, and our 3rd spray targeted at the 95% point in the migration on the 20th of May. Flowering started on the 25th of May and ended on the 11th of June. And as you can see, the migration continued throughout that period, which leads to more problems because there is nothing we can use on gall mite which is licensed for use during flowering. We were also looking at the migration of the mites on different varieties. So here we've got 2019's data and 2020's data. And you can see in 2019 that the migration started at different dates on each of the 5 varieties. Whereas in 2020, it was a very synchronized start. And in 2019, the finish of the migration was quite well spaced between the varieties, where in 2020, it was much more synchronized. Why? This is one of the things we don't know and we don't understand. What's causing these differences between years and what's causing these differences between varieties? So we are awaiting the final results of this trial on applications of acaricides for control of gall mite, but we hope to get those to you as soon as we can. We've also been monitoring gall mite migration across the country with the help of growers. So with the aid of LR Suntory, 5 growers across the country were selected or volunteered to help monitor their own gall mite. So we sent out kits with instructions on how to do this. Some growers managed, and unfortunately some growers didn't. And COVID got in the way. So in an ideal world, we'll have been able to go out and see all the growers involved and help solve their problems in the field. But trying to work out what was going wrong over Skype or Teams just proved impossible. But we did get some data, and it has showed some interesting patterns. I'd like to repeat this, but I think with COVID where it is, that I think this year would be just a waste of time. So I would like to repeat it next year. So what have we got out of it so far? Well, as you can see from all these coloured lines, the gall mite migration did quite different things across the country. They all started around about the same time in sort of mid-March to late March, but the end of the migration went on much longer than any of us expected it to. You can see from the Suffolk Ben Cleabrecht site with the blue line that we were still catching quite significant numbers of mites right into June. This wasn't what we expected, but we do need more data to actually model this and to be able to combine it with weather data to actually understand what's going on. So I'd just like to thank the AHDB for funding the work, John Hinchcliffe and Hugh Boucher for hosting the two dormancy breaking trials, Harriet Prosser and Rob Saunders for all their help in finding growers and setting up the site and advice on what products to use, and then my trials team for delivering the work, and then the 5 farms who have been gall mite monitoring for me. So, any questions? And thank you very much.
Adrian, thank you very much indeed. A very clear and concise presentation there. Just a couple of things for me to say at this point. Firstly, as regards the SCEPTRE Plus project and the coding of products, it's always frustrating to all of us, growers included, that we can't divulge the information about the exact nature of these. This is due to the discretion we have and agreement we have with the agrochemical companies that supply these products. For commercial reasons, they don't always want us to divulge that sort of information. So I know it's difficult and it is frustrating, but without doing it this way, we wouldn't get their help and cooperation with products. So that's just a comment regarding all the SCEPTRE Plus work that we do. Secondly, just coming back onto the winter chill work, just to let growers know, and many of you will be joining on the Blackcurrant Growers Association meeting later today, but AHDB has funded a desk study because a number of growers have been experimenting with different products, and we've been trying to collate that information too, so that will become available to the industry in due course. I'm going to draw in our expert at this point, Rob Saunders. First of all, Rob, apologies. I think I said you had done 8 or 9 years with GlaxoSmithKline. I believe it was 14, so apologies for that. Rob, what sort of difference does this information, first of all, if we deal with winter chill, what difference does this make to growers? Will the results that Adrian's provided us with this morning make any difference to what growers are doing in practice?
Yeah, I think it will. I think that the results of the Innovate UK project had already started to be taken up in industry, and the further refinement from Adrian's work, I think gives us a bit more clarity, and I think it will be more widely taken up.
Good. Okay. And as regards the SCEPTRE Plus work, do you think there's an opportunity for growers to change what they're doing as a result of all of this?
Yeah, tantalizing that we know what's been done, but we don't know what the results are yet. I'm particularly interested in what we'll get out of thiopron, which is a sulfur product. And when thiopron first appeared in the marketplace, I kind of dismissed it because I thought, well, it's just another sulfur. But actually learning a bit more about it, it's a sulfur which is very accurately milled to 1.2 microns, and should give us more activity, and is said to be more rain fast as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of that one, because well, the other thing about thiopron is it's not fantastically expensive. So if we can get even equivalent activity out of it, I'm very much encouraged by the fact it's supported by a full label. And I think the identity of the other products will become known in time, and I think one of them looks like it could be quite promising for the future.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. We have got a question from the audience. What method was used? This is a question to Adrian. What method was used for trapping the gall mite?
Yeah, many years ago we developed a method of miniature sticky trapping, which we use for gall mite, which is a lid of a pill pot with a square of double-sided sticky tape on the inside of it, with a pin going through that into the cut surface of the stem of the blackcurrant, and you put that on 5 centimeters above the gall, and you check it once or twice a week, and you can actually see the mites stuck on the double-sided sticky. The hardest part about, 2 things that are hard about it. One is finding a suitably sticky double-sided tape that doesn't go dry when it's left out in the field for a week. And the other one is just seeing the size of the mites themselves, because they are tiny. 10 side by side is the width of a human hair.
Yeah, I completely take my hat off to the growers who've managed to do that, because it's a very, very fiddly operation. It was something I think that Adrian and Jerry developed some years ago, but at least 70% of the mites as they emerge from the bud just want to migrate upwards, and they head up the stem sort of a few centimeters and encounter there. And normally, of course, they're looking for either fresh buds to infect, or they're looking to launch themselves onto airstreams to go and infect other plantations. And it's just taking advantage of that behaviour to monitor what's coming out of the buds. It's a very elegant technique, but a bit fiddly.
Okay, thank you, Rob. I have to say, well, I'm going to embarrass Adrian here by saying he's one of the most resourceful people I've ever met. So I'm sure Adrian will continue to look for alternative ways of improving that as the years go by and as you do more work on it. I think that that probably draws that to a conclusion. One final thing I was going to say about the SCEPTRE Plus projects. My colleague Adam Doxford, who's in our crop protection team, is constantly monitoring the results of our SCEPTRE Plus projects, and we liaise with him over the optimum products that performed well in these trials, and he then collaborates and works with the agrochemical companies, CRD and others, to try and secure EMUs for some of these products for the future, and that is an ongoing process, and Adam will be making attempts, do whatever he can to try and secure some of the optimum products that do come out from the results of this trial once we have the final results. So Adrian, on that note, thank you so much for your time. It's been very helpful. We will move on now, and our next speaker is Dave Kaye. Now, I should say Dave Kaye works for RSK ADAS. Dave has stepped into the breach here because this work was actually done by Sonia Newman, his colleague at ADAS, and Sonia unfortunately moved on to pastures new just after Christmas, but Dave stepped in to try and present the results of the work that Sonia did. For those of you that don't know Dave has been working at RSK ADAS Horticulture since 2015. He's a consultant and researcher and has worked on a number of research projects for both us at AHDB and other private companies, dealing with crops such as fruit, protected edibles, vegetables and ornamentals. Dave, tell us all about the findings that Sonia picked up on from the leaf spot work on SCEPTRE Plus and blackcurrants.
Thank you for that introduction, Scott. Yes, as Scott said, I'll be presenting on behalf of Sonia Newman, who's since left ADAS. I'm a plant pathologist, so I'm happy to discuss the SCEPTRE Plus blackcurrant leaf spot fungicide trial with you today. So, blackcurrant leaf spot is obviously a big problem, and you'll all be aware of it. It's caused by the fungus Trypanopaesia ribis, and it's a big issue for blackcurrant production in the UK, with an annual cost of about £1.1 million to the industry. However, some years are always worse than others, so it can be very substantially more in the future. The disease infects bushes early in the season and causes small brown spots to develop, and you can see some that are slightly large on the image there. And these spots over time coalesce, and ultimately they turn the leaves yellow or they turn the leaves brown, and this can lead to reduced photosynthetic area initially, but also premature leaf drop. And obviously that's going to significantly affect the ability of the plant to produce fruit. Severe defoliation, which can occur, can lead to about, in susceptible varieties, about losses of 75%. So it is a very significant issue. Wounding is a big area where the pathogen can get into the plants, and this can happen certainly at harvest during scarring events at this time, but also another key time for infection to occur is during flowering. So the aim of this project was really to identify new products to treat this disease. So a field-based trial was located in Gloucestershire, and to identify alternative chemical but also biological treatments to effectively manage the disease. And it was carried out in the susceptible variety Ben Hope, which is very susceptible to the disease, so a really good variety choice to choose. And we trialed 6 fungicide treatments, and as I said, they were a mixture between biological and conventional chemistry. 5 of these were trial products. One of them was the untreated control, so we always compare with an untreated control, and the other treatment was a program, the industry standard program for comparison reasons, and we used Signum, Switch and Cysteine, and you can see the standard program in the table at the bottom right hand corner here. Now if we look at this table, as Scott said already, I do apologize for the amount of chemicals which are coded. It's frustrating, as Scott said, for everyone involved, but it is necessary. But I can tell you a little bit more about them. So AHDB 9892 is a new SDHI and azole mix. 9862 is a next generation azole, and then the next 3 are all biological products. 9852 is a plant extract. 9871 is a microbial bacterial based biofungicide, and then 9967 is a different biological product, but it's a plant extract as well, but likely with different activity to 9852. And what I think is really interesting about this trial is that there's a lot of biological products within it, which is unusual, but it's part of the way that we're going. Moving on to applications. So there were 4 applications of test products. You can see that the industry standard program was Signum Switch, Signum Cysteine, so that was a mixture of products. However, we trialed the test products as straight programs. Now that's not something that you would normally want to do or be allowed to do. However, it was done because it gives us a really good ability to really robustly check the efficacy of these products. But also it enables us to get some clear views if there is any phytotoxic issues with the use of these products. And they were applied roughly every 10 days, with the first treatment applied when the first grape was visible, the second when the first flower was open, the third at first fruit set, and then the 4th application was done post-harvest. And this was done on the 21st of July, but the crop was harvested on the 16th of July, so about 5 days after harvest. And that is one of the key times that needs to be targeted for effective management. With regard to assessments, there was an assessment at every treatment date, treatments 1 to 4, but also a final assessment 2 weeks after the final treatment application. And of course, phytotoxicity was assessed for damage, but we also looked at the efficacy with regard to severity, so the amount of foliage of 20 bushes per plot, which showed symptoms of leaf spot, but also we assessed the incidence, and that was recorded as a presence or absence of the disease. And these are the results. So starting with phytotoxicity, there was a little bit of transient phytotoxicity, which was seen in products 9862 and 9967. However, these were commercially acceptable and they're not to worry about. There was no major concerns there. This trial was done in 2020 and it was a very warm, dry start to the year, so disease development was very slow during fruit development. So we didn't get a whole lot of differences until later on. However, after harvest, we saw more rain and good disease development, so we could get differences. And as you can see on the graph on the right, This is a graph of the severity, disease severity, at the final post-harvest assessment 2 weeks after. And you can see that all products outperformed the control, the water control, which had about 16% coverage with leaf spot symptoms. And all products actually gave significant reductions. So they all worked, which is really positive for a trial using biological and conventional chemistry-based products. With regard to severity, the product that performed best was AHDB 9871, and that's the microbial bacterial-based product. So it's really good to see a biological product which had no other chemistry input perform so well. But all other products did well. The incidence data isn't shown on this graph. However, 9852, which is also another biological product, a plant extract, that gave the lowest incidence level. So that reduced incidence from 95% in the untreated plots to 31%. And that was comparable to 40% in the industry standard. And with regard to severity and incidence, no product outperformed the industry standard, but they're all comparable to it. And you can see here, if it's clear enough on your screens, sorry, it would be easier on a big projector, the differences in symptoms and green leaf area in the untreated water control post-harvest and the biologically treated AHDB 9871 plots on the bottom. And hopefully you can see a clear difference in the amount of symptoms and leaf area. So in summary, although we saw a little bit of phytotoxic effects, they weren't commercially of concern. They were transient, so it's not something to worry about. So I would say that all products that were tested at the rates that they were tested were crop safe. With regards to the efficacy, at post-harvest assessments, all treatments gave significantly better control than the untreated in reducing the incidence and severity. However, as I said, there were no significant differences between each other. So nothing outperformed the standard, but they were all comparable to it. That biological product 9871 was the best performing treatment for reducing disease severity. But it's important to note that this was a low disease pressure year. And often if we have a much greater, maybe wetter conditions, we might see under higher disease pressure, these biologicals struggle to give as good a control as some of the conventional chemistry. But certainly if you've got a season like we had last year, they show really good promise. Now 9871, I just want to talk a little bit about that for a second. As I said, it's a microbial bacterial based biofungicide, and I've actually used this product outdoors in SCEPTRE Plus work on Narcissus, and it performed really well. It gave good significant reductions then. So it looks like this product and other products we're testing do have a role in outdoor cropping, whereas biological outdoor disease control, whereas biological products typically haven't done so in the past. I'm not saying chemistry is dead, but these products can be really useful if they're incorporated into a resistance management program. They could extend spray intervals or be tank mixed potentially to enhance the efficacy of other products. A lot of biological products are also more suitable for applying close to harvest if there aren't operator exposure concerns. So some of the biological products tested in this work could be really useful for blackcurrant. Now, these were the final report for this work was only submitted in December, but as all products performed brilliantly, there are certainly some products that could be taken forwards for EMUs. I'm not currently aware of which ones have been because it's too soon since the work was handed in, but hopefully in not too long a time we'll start to see some promising products which we can name and which also will be available for use for yourselves. Finally, I think that covers the trial, but there's a few acknowledgements I'd like to make. Firstly, to Sonia Newman, who did all this work and did a fantastic job and with some brilliant results. To AHDB Horticulture for funding for work with contributions from the agrochemical companies, as Scott said. then Harriet Prosser, who's provided assistance and direction for the work, and also for Edward Keane, the host grower, because without host growers, we wouldn't be able to do any of this work in commercial settings. So you really are invaluable for getting this work off the ground. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you very much indeed, Dave. That's very helpful. Just in response to your comment on securing EMUs or emergency authorizations, as I said earlier, Adam Doxford is working with us on this. I know of one product that he is currently working on, and he's liaising with the agrochemical company over that to secure residues data in support of an EMU. But we will continue, obviously, to look at all these other products that have performed well. Can I just kick off with a question to you about this single year only? Obviously, 1 year only doesn't give you enormous confidence. Can you just remind me, were the results statistically significant?
So all products gave statistically significant control for both incidence and severity. So okay. they all had significant impact, yeah.
That's helpful. Another question that's come in, would a water control increase the disease level?
But yes, there is potential that using a water control will increase the disease level. There's always that discussion whether you apply the water at the volume you would have applied the other products at. We tend to do that. Often when you spray a chemical, or sorry, spray the water control, the water may not be there for that long depending upon the conditions. And normally it's the overall environmental conditions like long-term wetness during wet periods, which is going to be the most serious risk for allowing the pathogen to infect and spread. But yeah, there is an argument there.
Good, thank you. A couple more questions. Even though it was a low pressure disease year, do you think that any of the new trial products would help with botrytis control as the industry standard products do?
Just let me check the names of the products, but I know that some of those products I have tested against botrytis in the past on other crops, and they've shown, at least 3 of them I've tried against botrytis, and they've shown good control. So there would be some control of botrytis certainly with many of those products, yeah.
Okay, that's encouraging. Another question, a similar related question, would these products also be effective on septoria leaf spot?
I would assume some of them would be. I don't tend to work that much on septoria, so I'm not fully able to answer that question, but I think some of them probably would be, yes.
Okay,
I can look that up for you.
Yes, please. Thank you, Dave. Can I bring Rob in at this point? Rob, how important is it to the growers out there to find alternatives to Cystane and Signum and other products like that for leaf spot control?
Oh, I'm starting to feel very old now. If we go back to chlorothalonil, that was brilliantly effective on leaf spot, and just a small dose at the beginning of the season had you clean all the way through. Yeah, as these things fall by the wayside, finding replacements is really important. I've got a question for Dave actually. The 9871 looks really exciting and really encouraging. You say it's bacterial. Do we know if we are applying the metabolite of the manufacturing process, the metabolite of the bacteria, or are we applying bacteria which will form colonies on the surface of the plant?
I think the answer to that isn't. I'm not going to be very clear with your answer there. I think if it's similar to other bacterial-based biofungicides which are available now. But it's actually a new one which isn't currently authorized in the UK, but is in the process coming in. And yes, there's an argument that it could be the metabolite, but there's also belief that the presence of the bacteria itself will act as an inhibitory effect. So if it's on the surface of the leaf, then nothing is going to stop anything else from getting there. And it's also believed that the presence of the bacteria might also have a defense-inducing response on the plant as well. So I think, yes, you're quite right. Hopefully the metabolites will have an impact on reducing or an impact on the disease, but I think the whole picture with the bacteria themselves will enhance that. But the research on that isn't 100% clear yet, but it would be interesting to know the full effect of each portion of bacteria, the metabolites, and the kind of blockage effect that it has on plants.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Well, have we got
Rob,
time,
sorry,
got
go
time
on.
for one more, Scott, or not?
Go on, very quick, because we need to move on to Chloe. But go on, one last question from you, Rob.
Okay, when we plant a new plantation and there's no inoculum on site, in year one, we know we can look after it and keep the leaf spot out with half a spray program. What do we know about the overwintering stage of leaf spot, and where and how can we reduce the overwintering inoculum?
I can't answer that question for you now, but I'll look that up. So I'm not, I don't tend to work on this crop, but I can look up an answer.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, perhaps a slightly unfair question, given that Dave's just stepped in to help out or cover for Sonia Newman. But I think, Dave, yeah, if you are able to answer that question or get back to us, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, let's move on. We have one more talk to present, and our presenter is Chloe Whiteside from RSK ADAS. Chloe has been working with ADAS since 2011, working on a range of crops, particularly bedding, pot plants, hardy nursery stock bulbs, outdoor flowers, soft fruit, and protected edibles. So there's very little you haven't worked on there, Chloe. In recent times, she's been working on a big project called Transition to Responsibly Sourced Growing Media, and also she's been working with the Pot and Bedding Plant Centre. As I said before, Chloe is covering for Sonia Newman, so she's presenting the results of the work that Sonia did for us on SCEPTRE Plus, looking for alternative herbicides for weed control and blackcurrants, which is, I know, a particular problem with perennial weeds in mind, and also in newly established plantations. Chloe, tell us what you and Sonia have found.
Well, thank you for my introduction, Scott. Yes, so my name is Chloe Whiteside, I work for ADAS, and this morning I'm just going to be going through some of the results from the SCEPTRE Plus project, looking at weed control in blackcurrants. So a little bit of background first as to why is this important, and why do we need to keep carrying out research into it. Now, as you're all probably very well aware, there is a limited availability of herbicides that are currently available to blackcurrant growers. And so obviously, therefore, this is going to leave quite large gaps in the weed control spectrum. So in terms of on-label authorizations, there's actually only 5 active ingredients that we have on-label, and around 6 that we have through an extension of authorization for minor use. But within those 11 active ingredients, some of them also have the same mode of action. So from a resistance point of view, there's very few products really that we can keep bringing into programs in order to minimize the risk of resistance and keep on top of weed control and keep good weed control year on year. So it's important that we continue to look for new chemistry and different modes of actions so that we can just help to increase the armory that we have against weeds in the crops. So there are a wide range of weed species that are problematic for blackcurrant growers, and in particular black nightshade being one of them. So you can see the image there on the side of the screen of black nightshade. So this is an annual weed. Generally, it's not very well controlled by products that are currently applied just prior to bud burst. So it does have some herbicide resistance, but it also tends to germinate later in the spring. So quite often, if herbicides have been applied earlier, then some of them may start to already be losing their residual activity, and therefore it can be harder to control this particular weed. And obviously, as we're well aware, the berries of the black nightshade could be a huge contaminant, so we really need to keep on top of that weed before it gets to any stage where it could be producing berries. So this piece of work in 2020 was looking for residual herbicides which are effective and crop safe, but we also wanted to just try and put some particular focus on black nightshade control and see if there were any products that stood out as really being good at controlling that weed. So just to give you a bit of an insight into how the trial was carried out. So this was also carried out in Gloucestershire on a crop of Ben Hope. And we had just one herbicide application, which was put on after bud break. and to try and minimise the herbicide hitting the crop, that was put on with a single nozzle hooded lance. You can see in the table that we had 6 treatments overall, so we always have the untreated to compare against, and then our grower standard was a SCEPTRE Plus Artist mix, and then we've got 4 coded products there. Again, apologies for the fact that they are coded, but I can give a little bit of an insight into those products a bit later on. So of those 4 experimental products, we have actually looked at 3 of them in previous SCEPTRE Plus projects on bush fruit in 2018. So we have got some knowledge and understanding of their efficacy and their safety, but this is taking it forward into looking particularly on blackcurrants. So this one application went on the 23rd of April in 2020, and then we made some assessments at 2, 4, 9 and 12 weeks after that. So the important bit, the results, in terms of crop damage, we actually saw that the grower standard, the SCEPTRE Plus Artist, and then one of the coded products, so 9975, these both caused a tiny amount of scorching to expanded leaves on low branches. So these were obviously hit during the application. You can see it in a photo there where it's just kind of scorched around the edge. So we've got some brown necrosis and lightening of the leaf right at the bottom there. But this didn't cause any long-term effects. So we didn't see this moving to any of the other leaves in the crop. It didn't cause any long-term problems. And so from a commercial point of view, then it's considered commercially acceptable. So from that, actually, none of the 4 experimental treatments gave us any phytotoxic effects. And so from that, we take that they are all crop safe. So in terms of the efficacy, Dave mentioned this in his presentation, that the weather was extremely dry for a good period of time, from around about end of March through to June. So in terms of carrying out trials on residual weed control, not ideal conditions. So weed growth was slow initially because of this weather. So the measurements or the assessments that we did earlier on didn't really show huge amounts of differences between the treatments. However, we then did start to get quite wet weather from around July onwards. So this then started to result in quite a rapid increase in weed germination after we'd done our 9-week assessment. So from that point, we were able to kind of monitor how the weeds are developing and carry out another assessment after 12 weeks. So I will show you that in just a second. In terms of the main weed species that we were getting within the trial, generally it was mainly creeping thistle, clover and creeping buttercup. Now, we were hoping that there was going to be black nightshade. There was black nightshade present throughout the plots, but the general percentage cover was quite low. So trying to pick up on the differences between the products and their efficacy on the black nightshade was a little bit tricky within this trial, which is slightly unfortunate. But by the end of the trial, the weed cover had increased to around 42.5% in the untreated plots. So it had got to quite a good high stage and good for us in terms of looking at our results. And all of the experimental treatments showed significantly lower weed control, so significantly lower weed cover after 12 weeks. So if we look at that on a graph, so what you're seeing here is obviously percentage weed cover along the bottom with the products going up on the right-hand side. The very dark green bar is the very first assessment. So this was 2 weeks after treatment application. So you can see that in the untreated, we're up to about 10% weed cover. And then all of the other products round about probably 5 to 8%. So the SCEPTRE and Artist given us good control earlier on, so the grower standard, and then the experimental ones very similar to that. And you can see how the weed cover stayed low in the first 3 assessments, so up to the 24th of June, until suddenly we got that change in the weather and we got some rainfall, and then we started to get the weeds growing. So then we get up to this 42.5% in the untreated after 12 weeks, and significant differences with all of the other ones with much lower weed control, weed cover compared to that untreated. So I've circled these 2 here, 9975 and 9900, because they just stand out a little bit more in giving us better weed control. So particularly 9900, which is very comparable to what we're using at the moment, the Stompacqua and Artist standard product. But all of these are giving us good results and promising for kind of the future. So I've just got a few images here to show you. So this is after the 12 weeks. This is our final assessment. So this is our untreated control, where you can see the weeds are just nicely spreading across the ground alongside the crop here. This bottom one here is 9900. So this is the one that's giving us the most weed control overall. And then next to that is a 9975. So you can see where there are a few weeds that are still popping up, but generally the weed control is much better and significantly better than what we were seeing in the untreated. You can still see cracks in the ground here where the ground was so dry. So even though we were starting to get wet rain, kind of evidence of just how dry it was getting at that site during that time. So what does this mean in terms of a take-home message? Well, it was encouraging to see that none of these products really gave us any phytotoxic effects. So as I said, we did see a little bit of damage from the grower standard and 9975, but this was minimal and it didn't last and it didn't lead to anything that would be considered a problem. So it was commercially acceptable. And all of the treatments had significantly reduced weed cover after those 12 weeks. So 9900 had the lowest weed cover overall, but all of the experimental products were showing some promise. Now, in terms of kind of what do those products control and where could they possibly be on the market? So 9975, this one should give good control of both black bindweed and black nightshade. And it's currently already used in outdoor ornamentals and field veg under an EAMU. So the hopes of getting an EMU through for blackcurrants are, it should be easier to do that than something that's very new and is a longer way away from getting authorization. So that's one that's already in use in other horticultural crops. 9900, which also gave us good control. This should be more effective on creeping thistle, groundsel and sow thistle, but this one's not currently authorised for use in the UK, so it is a little bit further away. And the same with 9917, which is a graminicide and then does have some broadleaf weed activity, but again is one that's still a little bit further away from the market. But don't kind of be discouraged by that. It's good to see that there are things that are kind of gradually coming through that are giving us good control and minimal or zero crop phytotoxicity. So it's good to know that we are still trying as hard as possible to keep bringing new things to market and keep giving new options for blackcurrant growers. So just to acknowledge that, thank you for the AHDB for funding the work and for the chemical companies that supplied their products. Also thank you to scientific staff and my colleagues over at ADAS Rosemond who helped to run the trial. Thank you to Edward Keane who provided the site and crop for the trial, and also to Harriet from Lucasade Centauri for her technical input. And that brings me to a close and happy to take any questions, Scott.
Thank you so much, Chloe. Again, very useful presentation. Thank you as well for including those pictures because they're very helpful at the end. Difficult year for all scientists, I think, doing crop research because of the dry conditions, and it's obviously hampered both you, well, the work that you and Sonia did last year. Just to also add, just to make the point, 9975, the fact that it is approved for use on veg in this country does help our chances, and Adam Doxford will be aware of that. But it's also nice to have other products for the longer term as well, which we can look at. Question here has come in for you, Chloe. Will product 9975 also prevent germination of woody nightshade? So that's a different Solanum species from black nightshade. This is Solanum duocamara. Any thoughts on that?
Off the top of my head, I'm not completely sure. So I would have to double check that. Yeah, it's possible, but yeah, I would have to check just to be kind of certain, to be honest.
one would hope that it would, but yeah. We could look at that. Let's bring Rob in at this point. Rob, just how serious is the lack of herbicides proving to be for blackcurrant growers at the moment?
Well, we're suffering from some particular gaps in the spectrum rather than sort of lack of herbicides just by itself. You know, we struggle particularly with thistles, and since the demise of MCPB and Ronstar, we've on lots of sites as well, we struggled with bindweed. So I'm particularly excited about 9975. It can't come soon enough as far as I'm concerned, and it will be hugely useful for growers.
Okay, thank you. Another question for Chloe. Would product 9900 help control established creeping thistle or only germinating creeping thistle? So would it have any effect on established thistles? Do we know?
Probably not that much, because it's generally just for a residual activity. So if there's anything that's there that's already well established, then it might have, you know, it might kind of knock it back a bit, but I don't think it would give huge control of something that's already well established. Okay,
thank you. Rob, any views on that?
No, nothing further to add really, I think, at this stage.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm conscious of time. I don't think we've got any more questions coming in at this point. So first of all, Chloe, thank you so much indeed. Particularly like to thank Dave and Chloe, because it's never easy presenting the work of colleagues, but you did a splendid job, and I think it's very clear. So thank you so much, Chloe. And I think if there are no other questions, I'm just having a look on the question board. I'm not seeing any more. So I think pretty much that takes us to the end of the session, and we hope that you found it useful. I do have a final wrap-up slide, so we're just going to bring that up now. Yeah, first of all, thank you to all our presenters, to Chloe, to Dave, to Adrian, and particularly to Rob for coming in and helping us out to put some context into all of these presentations. I think that really does help the growers and those listening and viewing this presentation. Don't forget about basis and Noroso points. If you didn't get the chance to register your basis at the beginning of the webinar, you can send your details to Aaron Newman, aaron.newman@ahdb.org.uk. And any further questions that you have, please do submit them to me and I can pass them on to the presenters. I know that one or two of the questions they couldn't answer this morning, and hopefully they'll be able to get back to me and we can make you aware of the results of those. And also, just to remind you again, for anybody that arrived late, and I know one or two people did arrive late, and I also know one or two people were having trouble with sound. So, you know, I'm sorry that you had that difficulty, but the good news is you will be able to watch this recording of this event next week on our website. So thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to you for viewing and listening in. I hope you found it useful. Do look out for future AHDB horticulture webinars. For those of you in the fruit industry, you might be interested to know that we have our tree fruit technical day on Thursday, the 25th of February, so the week after next. That will start at 1 o'clock and run through till 5:40 in the afternoon. So we've opted for an whole afternoon session for that this year, rather than doing it for the whole day. This is really designed to help growers who are busy out in the field in the morning. So look on our AHDB website for that, and you can register for that if you want to join us for that event, where we'll be updating you on all our AHDB research results on tree fruit crops. So thank you all very much again. Can I just say, as you leave this webinar, you will be asked to complete a form asking your opinions and views on the webinar, how useful you found it. Please do take an opportunity to complete that if you have time. But thank you so much again, and we hope you have a productive day, even though it's very cold and in some cases snowy outside. But thank you for now, and goodbye.